This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
The issue of photo enforcement of traffic laws, whether we're talking speed cameras or red light cameras, and we're mostly going to talk red light cameras today, but it's an issue that's close to my heart for a couple of reasons. Number one, I hate them. I've hated them for a long time because they have them in Australia as well, and they're just, you know, the traffic Nazis with these cameras over there. But the other thing is, I remember that photo traffic enforcement was the first topic I ever talked about when I filled in on a then Clear Channel, now iHeart radio station. When I filled in on KOA, I talked about this stuff, and this topic was what actually ended up allowing me to get a job in radio. So it's kind of responsible for me having the second dream job of my life. But I still hate them. It's a great topic, but I hate them. And there has been discussion from time to time about whether any given governor would sign a law to eliminate red light cameras, and John Hickenlooper didn't, and Jared Polis says he won't, but they're really done on a local level, not a state level. So there had been some talk about expanding the red light camera program in the city of Denver at an initial cost of $1.2 million before all the revenue that comes back to Denver from stealing people's money through these things. And one brave man and his wife, who lived just the most interesting life, decided to take a weekend, figure something out, and then this guy was in a position to maybe do something about it. I'm talking about Councilman Kevin Flynn. Kevin, good morning. Thanks for being here. And tell us what you and your wife did on a recent weekend.
Well, I'll tell you some of it. I won't tell you all of it.
Right. Yeah, that's for a Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic spot.
You know, when I was at the Rocky Mountain News 10 years ago, and the red light cameras first came into use, there was some question about the yellow change interval, the yellow light timing. Denver, I guess for as long as anyone can remember, had used the legal minimum of 3 seconds of yellow, no matter what the speed of traffic was or what the speed limit was. So Colorado Boulevard, you had 3 seconds to come to a stop. And same as little side streets, 3 seconds, which is appropriate there, but probably not on Colorado Boulevard. So I did a bunch of stories and looked into the studies, and the fact is the federal guidance from USDOT says if you're going to use photo enforcement, you should try everything else first. Photo enforcement should be your last resort, and that's what Denver was not doing in 2008 when they first put them up. As a result of the stories I wrote, they actually did add yellow time to the 4 camera locations back in 2008, 2009 when they came online. So when we wanted to expand it, this past week, I wanted to see at the 3 intersections where they wanted to put them, what was the yellow change interval. And lo and behold, I found that they were set below the standard that Denver is now using, and they just hadn't updated them. And this was going to cause, or induce a host of violations. I'll use one example. We still had a 3-second yellow at westbound 13th Avenue at Lincoln Street, right down there by the new state courts building, right? Mm-hmm. That's at the bottom of a steep incline, 6.1% grade, which is the same as you have on Mount Vernon Canyon coming down I-70. And to put a 3-second yellow at the bottom of that street was going to cause needless violations by drivers who are simply obeying the laws of physics rather than the laws of traffic. You know, you can set an appropriate yellow time that will cause people to stop or safely continue through. And
right.
That's what you want. That's what traffic engineers want. And I really want to thank the Denver Traffic Engineering Division and the Denver Police Department for reading the memo I sent out on Monday about the little adventure I had with my wife. We went out on 18th Avenue and 13th Avenue and out on Alameda, where we were going to put these 3 new cameras. And we timed all the yellow times leading up to the proposed camera locations. And guess what? you had longer yellow times at the signals upstream of these locations than at the locations themselves, except for the one at Alameda and Santa Fe. That gives you 4 seconds, and that's probably more appropriate for that traffic. But on 18th Avenue, you start from Clarkson and start heading west, you had 4-second yellows at every signal coming up until you get to about Logan. Then they drop to 3 seconds. And that's going to induce violations because drivers have an expectation. People don't want to die. People want to stop.
Right.
Most people. You got the few outliers, of course.
So I wonder if the fact that the yellow is set for and I'm going to call it too short a duration. I don't know what
I would say that too.
Okay. So the fact that the yellows are too short could also cause people, currently, put aside the camera for a second, cause people to say, wow, lots of people are running red lights at these intersections.
Exactly. And in Denver, that had been our practice for years. And I credit, about 10 years or so ago, the traffic engineer in Denver, a guy named Brian Mitchell, I credit him with actually reading the stuff that I came up with and saying, you know what, we really ought to revamp our signals around Denver. And they started doing that. And how 13th at Lincoln didn't get changed in that period, I don't know. But all I do know is that if you put a camera there without also adjusting the yellow change, they call it the yellow change interval, without adjusting that yellow for the traffic conditions that you have, especially with the downhill grade, you're going to call, you're not going to stop red light running, you're just going to photograph it. And
That's a great way to put it.
I don't need the $75 fine that badly that I need to induce violations and then just send out tickets. It's just not right.
Why did it take?
Let me tell you, Russ. This is fully because I've taken some criticism from the Vision Zero folks. I believe in Vision Zero, and I'm committed to that. I'm committed to traffic safety and reducing traffic deaths to zero. I would love to have a year where we have 0 traffic deaths in Denver. But safe signal timing is a necessary part of that. And if cameras are needed after we set the signals, I'm okay with that. But set the yellow appropriately first, and that's what they've decided to do. Thank you, Denver Police, and thank you, Denver Traffic Engineers, for coming down to my office yesterday and saying they agreed with my analysis.
Why did it take you and your wife?
A word for my wife, Ross, since you brought it up.
Yeah.
My wife, Harriet, such a wonderful woman. She not only agreed to go along with this, she got into it. So we're sitting there at each intersection. We park the car on a side street. We get out. We time all the lights. This is how we spend our weekend.
That's so funny.
This is date night for us.
All right. So why did it take you and your wife, right, to do this? I mean, I'm so glad that you did. But why didn't the appropriate people, the traffic engineers and all that? It would seem obvious. I mean, this isn't a new issue. Right. And anybody who's been studying red light photo enforcement for any period of time knows or should know, and if they don't know, they shouldn't be in the job, that the single most important thing you can do to try to manage red light running at an intersection is to manage the timing of the yellow light properly. It is number one. Everybody knows it. Why did it take you to go do this?
I'd like to say that's why people elected me in the first place, because they know that's the kind of work I do. Shameless plug. I talked, back when I did those articles 10 years ago, right? I talked to a CDOT engineer. Now, CDOT does not like to have red light cameras on the state highway system. So they denied the city's request to put one up at Colorado Boulevard and Monaco and Colorado Boulevard, what was the other one? Federal at Alameda. And I had a CDOT traffic engineer tell me 10 years ago, he says, if we have more red light running at, take a single corridor like Federal or Colfax. If I have one red light where there's more red light violations than at the signals ahead of it or behind it, that's my problem. That's the same drivers. They're obeying one signal, but they're violating the next one. Why is that? And you have to look at that, and it's not just signal timing. It could be a lot of sight distance. It could be the visibility of the signal heads, go from 8-inch signal heads to foot, 12-inch signal heads, increase the visibility. There's a whole host of countermeasures you should use before you use cameras as a last resort. And if cameras are an appropriate last resort, I would support that. And so I think part of the issue was that the Traffic Engineering Division didn't have the actual signal timing at 18th or at 13th. And when I went and timed them and put it in my memo, they went out and checked and found out I was right.
Yeah, again, I get that.
We
and
have
you're
like 1,200 signals or more around the city, so that maybe they just lost track of the timing here. But it's too easy to resort to camera enforcement when there are other measures at hand first. So I'm really glad that they've decided to do that.
And I'm glad, too. Again, it remains a little frustrating to me that you had to go do this, because anybody whose job involves making a decision about putting a red light camera in should know that the first thing to look at is the yellow, and they shouldn't have needed to wait for you. But again, I'm really glad that you did it. Now, it's well known that many cities around the United States of America, including Colorado Springs, had red light cameras and canceled their programs because they found that they were causing more accidents than they were preventing. What's the latest that you've seen on this kind of data? And for those who are new to the issue, the concept there is pretty simple. People see that there's a red light camera, and so they jam on their brakes to make sure that they don't violate, and then they cause the person behind them to run into them.
Now, the trade-off is that those types of accidents are less serious, cause fewer injuries, and the trade-off is that you're preventing more of the side impact crashes, the T-bone crashes, by people going through the light. And there's some evidence that may result in that, and that's fine also. However, you can also reduce that. You can also achieve that result by appropriately setting the yellow change. 10 years ago, I'll tell you how I got into this. And I don't know if the camera is still there, but in Fort Collins, I think in the 90s, they put in a camera at College and Drake. And this is the instance that led me to start questioning it when Denver was proposing it in 2008. At College and Drake, they put in a camera, and they were getting something like 200 tickets per month that were being spit out by this camera. And they were dutifully sending out all these tickets every month. They averaged like 210 a month is my recollection. And one month, suddenly, violations were reduced to an average, I think, below 20, fewer than 20 a month were going out. So the Fort Collins police called up the Fort Collins Traffic Division. They said, hey, something's going on at that intersection. We're not getting as many tickets as we used to. And the traffic engineer said, we were experiencing a lot of rear-end collisions by people stopping short, and so we added 1 second to the yellow. So I read that, and I thought, oh, geez, guess what? Physics works. The laws of physics work. Let me tell you the thing that motivated me this time. And in 2013, the state of California, a lot of traffic safety advocates got together and said, appropriate signal timing is really something we should do first. And they managed to get the California legislature to push through a requirement that any city in California that uses red light cameras must use what they call the ITE formula, the Institute of Transportation Engineers formula. And for the approach speed, they should use the 85th percentile speed. And if they don't have it, they should use the posted speed limit and add 7 miles an hour to it to generate the appropriate signal timing, and then round up to the nearest half second. When the city started to do that, they found their violations were reduced to such an extent that many cities have pulled out their cameras.
Right.
The example I like to use, and this was even before, in Loma Linda, in I think 2010, they added 0.7 of a second to a road where they were getting what was the average? 249 tickets per month on average, leading up to the time where they added 0.7 of a second. You know what they dropped to? 6 per month.
Wow.
That's only one red light runner every 5 days.
Amazing. All right, we got about 2 minutes left here. I want to ask you one other thing. A lot of folks, and if you're just joining us, by the way, our special guest Kevin Flynn represents District 2 on the Denver City Council and former longtime journalist here in Denver with the Rocky Mountain News. a lot of folks, including me, believe that most of the purpose for red light cameras is to take our money. I'm not saying your purpose, but I think most of the reason these things get installed is to take our money. And do you feel that way even a little bit? If not, how can you make me and my listeners feel like there's a real purpose to this, especially the red light cameras with all the stuff that you've said?
I wouldn't say that that's the primary motivation, honestly. I believe that once you get that flow of revenue, it's difficult to change your mind. And so that's why I'm especially happy that the administration has agreed to do this study, because it will result in less revenue than we expect. I think that's a good thing, because I don't need to put the city's hand into the wallets of motorists who are actually driving safely, but because of the too short signal timing, which I call an unsafe signal timing,
right?
We're going to charge them $75.
Yeah, hallelujah to that.
I don't need their money. I don't need their money that badly. The city's in very good shape.
I got just 30 seconds here, Kevin. Do you think the federal government's reaction to the possibility of safe injection sites in Denver has ended that conversation now for a while?
I'm unsure. The ball's in the legislature's court right now. I would hope that they take a good hard look at it, because I don't believe, and that's the reason I voted no on this. I was the only one who voted no.
Yeah, that's why I asked you.
I believe that if they took a good hard look at the evidence, they would see that it's not integrated enough to really tell people that this is an effective approach. I believe what Salt Lake City and Dayton, Ohio are doing is the better approach, and that's getting naloxone and Narcan out into the community.
And I've got to leave it there, Kevin, but if this comes up again, I'll have you back. Kevin Flynn from the Denver City Council, thanks to you and to your wife for what you've just done for us.
I'll tell you.
All right, we'll see you. We'll be right back.
Is sponsored by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans.
Big accident on the toll road up in the Brighton area. E470 at 120th. Sounds like a semi has rolled down the embankment. Numerous injuries and